Welcome to the Unstoppable Real Estate Agents Podcast. I'm your host and real estate productivity expert, Kim Hughes. Join me as we focus on real strategies and implement real solutions designed for you to achieve major success in your business and life while getting you organized. Welcome, everybody. Today we have Haden Riggs of Riggs Property Group out of Tyler, Texas. And he has been an agent since 2016. And he's going to join us today and talk about how he, as a real estate agent, and two, as a coach, how he works with his business in a community that, how big is Tyler? About 150,000?
About 150,000. Once you add like everybody kind of that, travels into Tyler to work, I would say we're probably like what, 300,000? Because I kind of consider like Mineola, Lindale area, all of that
Right.
together.
All the little communities, because we do have a huge medical facility that a lot of these little towns go into work and everything. But this is great because when some agents work in these huge communities like Dallas, it's kind of overwhelming. So when we talk to someone like you that's got a realistic number of population, then it's a doable thing, and you can kind of narrow down what your communities are, what you don't want to do, what you do, niche, etc. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. And then Hayden is going to share with us some things about his coaching business and some tips for y'all to use and that hopefully you can implement today. And then just how he runs his business and how he can give you some tips on how you can be equally successful and balance your work life along with your business. So that is a lot of stuff to cover. So Hayden, the first thing I'd like to do is tell us a little bit about you and how you got to Tyler.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am born and raised Troop, Texas, which is about 30 minutes outside of Tyler. I was born in Henderson, Texas, and I went to Troop Elementary and graduated from Troop High School. After I graduated high school, I moved to California and went to Fresno State, and quickly found out that I like the idea of college. I did not like going to class. And so kind of during that time, I started waiting tables when I was 18. And I actually stayed in restaurant industry for 12 years prior to getting my real estate license in 2016. So I've lived in Fresno, California. I've lived in the Woodlands. I've lived in Dallas, Austin. I've kind of been all over. But I met my wife. We waited tables together at a winery here in Bullard, Texas, which is like right outside of Tyler as well. When she was 19, I was 21. And so we were she went to Texas State to go to college. I kind of traveled around, and then we both ended up in Austin, where we lived for about 8 years. And I managed fine dining restaurants. I've worked in a plethora of restaurants, done a ton of jobs in those. And in Austin, my wife did music management. In 2016, it was January 1st. We had a huge private event for New Year's at this super bougie restaurant that I worked at. And we came that next morning to help clean up and for me to finish the books and stuff. And I got there and they were changing the locks on the doors. And my director of operations for the restaurant group was crying, and I'd worked with her for like 6 years. We'd worked at like two different restaurants together. And I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "The restaurant's closing." And I said, "When?" And she said,
Oh, no.
"Right now." And I said, I looked at my wife. My wife was there, and Bryson, our oldest, he was like 2 at the time. She had him on her hip, and I looked over at her and I said, "I can get my real estate license." Because I'd been wanting to get my real estate license for probably like 2 years, and the fear of stepping outside of a position to where I had income coming in and I knew how much I was going to make, stopped me from reaching for what I knew that I could do in my life. And so I was 29 years old. So I'd always felt like I could do more than be in restaurant industry. I just didn't really know how to do it. which I think is why I'm a coach now, is because I wasn't surrounded with those people that had the type of mindset to be like, hey, you can do more. You know what I mean? Like when
Right.
you work in a restaurant, people aren't like, hey, you can be a better father, or like, hey, you can make more money, like, hey, you can do this. It's more of like people are pissed because their steak's cooked wrong. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's not like the
Or
mindset
their
is
drink wasn't stiff enough.
exactly right. And so so from that I got my real estate license in 2 months. I started with Keller Williams there at Southwest Market Center in Austin. And I mean I waited tables 5-6 days a week and did real estate 7 days a week for the first year. I
Yeah.
was runner-up rookie of the year with KW there in Austin, which Caleb always socks it to me because she was actually rookie of the year at KW Tyler when she got her license about 4 years ago. So I grew a team there. We had the R&O group in Austin. I did 10 million in production my first full year. And then Kayla got pregnant with our second kiddo, and we knew that we didn't want to raise them in Austin. So we decided to move back home. And
Hmm.
it has been the biggest blessing in our lives, moving back home and getting to spend time with family. And it's just, we talked before we started this about God puts things in your way sometimes, and if you don't shut up and pay attention and be present, you're not going to pick up on it. And just moving home was one of the best things that we could have ever done.
Yeah.
So we moved home in 2016. I was intercepted by the owner of Keller Williams here. She asked me to be team leader probably like 6 times. I said no 5. And so that started my journey as CEO and team leader of KW Tyler, which was one of the best things I ever did for my business career.
Yeah.
It's kind of like my business in Austin was like a BMW and somebody throws you the keys to a Ferrari. Because at the time, I was over 80 agents. And then myself, my OP, and my MCA, which is really cool because she's actually our director of operations now for Riggs Property Group. We grew the market center from 80 agents to 262 in about
Mm.
3.5 years. So
So I'm going to stop you there
yeah.
because I think that's a very impressive number.
Mhm.
So I would like for you to
That's why
share.
you see all this gray. It wasn't
Oh,
this
I do.
gray
And
before.
yeah.
It wasn't this gray before I started. Yeah.
So I totally get that. I tried to go gray during the pandemic and I went, yeah, that was fun. We're not doing that again.
Oh, you're fun.
um, but share with us a little bit about how we all know you're with KW, but I think that this information is good for anybody with
Oh
any
yeah.
brokerage. If you're
Yes.
a single agent, whatever, and KW to me is probably my number one franchise because I've been involved with them since the beginning.
Mhm.
And I love that what Gary has done with helping agents that can, if they even leave KW and go somewhere else, they go with tools, which most
Oh,
brokerages,
absolutely.
they don't give you those tools. And so the one thing that I do brag about KW is they not only give you the tools, they give you multiple streams of tools,
Mhm.
and coaching is just a piece of it. So with that said, kind of tell us how you yourself envision taking that brokerage from where it was when you stepped in of what, 80 agents, and you took it to
Mhm.
260 something
Mhm.
in that timeline. Just
Uh, it was
dump it
a
out.
it was a lot of red wine and and panic attacks
Not white.
and white, red, it doesn't matter, girl, whatever. Um, you know, at first and I'll be completely transparent because I remember when I was moving here, I was contacting people like at restaurants to see like, hey, can I get a bartending gig on the weekend? Because I knew I'm from here, so I knew that it would be in my mind. I thought, oh, this will be easier for me to build my business because a lot of people know me in Tyler because I'm born
Mm,
and raised. And so the position I kept mulling it around, and it was really like I had a base salary, which wasn't very much, and then bonuses. And like looking at what it paid at that time, I was like, I can make more selling. I knew that. And it's just something, I don't, something was pulling me to it. And I'm glad that I listened to that, because doing that has set me up to, I mean, I've helped countless agents take their business from, they might be doing 3 million and now they're doing 30 million.
Yeah.
So, um, I don't, I don't quite know what the drive was, but it was more of when I got here, everybody was really stuck in their ways. And they kind of had like, oh, that can't happen here mentality. And when you tell me I can't do something, it like lights a fire under me to
Yeah.
where,
I'm the
like
same way.
I would prefer you to tell me that I can't do something, because it makes me that much hungry and push through the uncomfortable times. Because Lord knows there's more uncomfortable times than ones where you're just like sailing and killing it and you feel comfortable. Because when you start feeling comfortable, that's when you know it's time to
Right.
grow again. And or maybe you don't, and you're comfortable where you're at, and there's nothing wrong with that either, right? So
Hmm. No, no. But with these two numbers going from 87 to 200 and something, what do you think that you were offering? Was it agents or was it recruiting, bringing in new agents? What was it that you think you were offering or sharing with them that got them excited to join? Was it
um
the training that was involved? Is
I
it
think
just
I think it was
personality, luck of the draw?
I think it was a little bit of everything, because I came from the Austin market. When being in a market center that had almost 1,000 agents at it, there are a lot of robust training calendars. There are a certain level to your marketing has to be to even play in Austin, right? Because I mean, there
Hmm.
were at the time there were 16,000 agents, and it grew to 20,000 agents in Austin. So like if you went to lunch, it was all realtors and lenders. Like you knew everybody at like Clark's or Perla's. Like it was just that's how it was. So like your level of marketing had to be at a certain level for you to even be able to play. And so when I
Gotcha.
got to Tyler, I think the industry here was at a point to where it was a lot of agents that had been doing the same thing for 20, 30 years. And
Hmm.
then you had a lot of newer agents that wanted that, and they were super hungry for it, and they just needed somebody to believe in them. Because at the end of the day,
Right.
that's what coaching comes down to. Like, I can't fix your mindset, however I can tell you what I think about it, and I'm very transparent and straightforward. And then introducing leverage, like these agents were doing everything themselves. And like I say this all the time in my coaching rooms, or if you coach with me, if I ever say anything that seems um, kind of very straightforward, I want you to imagine that I'm saying it to myself, because I've earned the right to say that because I was that way. So if I
Right.
tell you, I like to say, you're making broke people decisions. Like I say that a lot, because when I
Yeah,
was
true.
when I was broke, I had a broke mentality, and broke mentality is I can't afford, like all these limiting beliefs come out of your mouth, like, oh, I can't afford this, or I can't afford to pay someone to do that. Well,
Right.
absolutely. If you're walking around saying I can't, and you're making broke people decisions, and that's the outfit that you want to wear for the day is I'm a broke person that doesn't think there's any way out of this life that I built for myself, well, then that's what
Hmm.
you're going to get. And so I think it
Right.
was a lot of bringing training and making our agents. I wanted our agents to be elite. Like I wanted our agents, if you were at another brokerage or at the same brokerage, right? With me, I don't care what brokerage you're at. We're all in this together at the end of the day. And if you were working with one of my agents, I wanted you to be like, oh, awesome. Like I'm working with a KW
Yeah.
agent. Like you knew that they were going to know cadence of the transaction. You knew that their vendor list was like top notch. They work the way that they do. And they just made it really easy to work with you. And so
Hmm.
through that, I mean, we were able to get our market share up to over 12% in the Tyler area. So
Yeah. That's
it was
great.
it was a lot of fun, and it definitely um, it brought out my love of coaching,
Hmm.
and my understanding of business and how to build such strong bonds with the people that are in the trenches with you, that you're unstoppable.
Right. And that is so true. So when you are, and let's kind of take a step back here because I think it's important for the audience to know what your market is like. So
Yeah.
with what you have done in Tyler, being about 150,000 people, what is like the price, the main, your main price point of homes,
Mhm.
and a little bit of history of how that works in Tyler, so that maybe somebody else that's in the same market can kind of relate
Yeah.
and know that you don't have to live in, Dallas or Houston or LA to
No.
make
Yeah.
really solid, good money and relationships. So if you would share that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so essentially the Tyler market now, the average price points are around 275,000. When I
Mm-hmm.
got here, the price point was I think around 210. In the past 6 years, the Tyler market has increased tremendously. So you have
Mm-hmm.
all these sellers that are sitting on big, they've got a lot of equity in their home, and a lot of them just don't really think about it because it's kind of like we were saying, right? Like you live on acreage and y'all been there a long time and you're probably sitting on a big piece of equity. And so for them to kind of understand that really took the market off. Plus Tyler is, you've got to think, if you're in a smaller market or you're in like a smaller town, I feel like larger cities it's starting to get to where people don't want to be in that hustle and bustle. And so I think you're going to see a lot
Right.
of smaller towns that still have all the amenities and stuff, because we've seen the pandemic was the best thing ever because now people work remotely. A ton of people work
Right.
remotely. They're moving out of states that have state taxes. They're moving to Texas because of the economy here. We don't have state taxes. So we
Mm-hmm.
saw a huge influx of people coming from other states that wanted that small town feel. And the other piece of that is like, you need to love where you live.
Right.
Like, people need to hear how excited you are to tell them about the restaurant that so and so owns, and this is the best thing there, and you can get all,
Mm-hmm.
like, I live in Troop, Texas, like that's where I live now, and there's like 1,300 people in the town. That's how small
Right.
it. And like,
Yeah.
I can't tell you how excited I am about the food truck situation in Troop, because a food truck parks at the four-way. Now, the four-way doesn't even have a blinking light, people. Okay. Like I don't even think there's stop signs. You just have to know to stop. And so like,
Yeah.
new food truck parks there like every day of the week. And I mean, we're busy. We have two kids, right? We run multiple businesses. So like the food trucks are like my jam. So when I talk about Troop, like to a lot of people in the area, they're like, "You were so excited about Troop, Texas," and I'm like, "Yes, I love it. Like this is where I'm
I
from.
love it.
It's my home. Like, you
Yeah.
can change that, and people want to work with excited, happy people, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
nobody
I
wants
have
to
to
work
share
with a sad.
something. Yeah, I have to share the food truck thing. And, of course, Minneella, we're kind of isolated. We're not near, the nearest town is Tyler or the city to go shopping. And people just think that's crazy. I'm like, we have a Walmart in the Brookshires and we have a 3-block radius of downtown antique shops
Which is
and we have
awesome.
restaurants. And I love it, but it was a culture shock when I moved here from Dallas. But the other day I was driving through town and I called my husband because I was on the way to the grocery store, and I called my husband. I said, "Hey, there's this food truck sitting in front of," and I said, "They serve Mexican food. Do you feel like you want to do that?" I said, "I could get some tacos or something." He was like, "Yeah, let's do that." Well, then when I got home and ate it, I told my husband, I said, "Doesn't this taste familiar?" And he said, "It does." Our middle son has had us, we've gone over and had lunch with him during lunch, and he took us to this restaurant called Ruby's. Ruby's.
Yes,
It's a
Ruby is
Mexican.
the best.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we would go over there and go, "Eric, you want to go eat lunch? Eric, you want to go have lunch?" And so when I saw the truck, it kind of was ringing a bell. And then I thought, "Oh, that sounds really familiar." Anyway, long story short, I texted my son and I said, "What's the name of that restaurant?" And he told me, I said, "Oh my gosh, we have a food truck here now from Ruby's." And he just started laughing and he went, "Mom, it's a once a week thing. You cannot eat there every day
Yeah, but you
because
can
it's
eat there
so
once
good."
a week.
I mean, I would put on so much weight,
Yeah.
but it was so good. And, the customer service. So when we see a food truck in Minneella, we're like, "What the heck is that? Let's go check it out,
Gotta go check it
because
out.
people like us don't have that luxury of seeing them lined up, everywhere.
And
So I
that's
always get a big kick out of that.
And I think that's kind of to the point of like the economy in smaller towns, right? Is like that's something about Tyler. Like these restaurants are opening these food trucks so that they can bring food out with the same quality out to these smaller outlying areas. And
Hmm.
I think it's really cool. I mean, you can tell obviously, like I love Tyler and the surrounding area.
Oh
It's
yeah.
a blessing. It's beautiful. And it's things like that that,
Yeah,
get people
it's just,
excited.
it's what makes that community so great. And as
Yeah.
an agent, I tell agents all day long, yes, you are the real estate agent in Tyler, Texas, but you also need to be the go-to person for everything. So with you knowing the name of that restaurant, that means you're in tune to what's going on in your community. Because if I'm calling and I'm like, I'm new to the area, I just bought a house, or I've lived here 20 years, but I still don't know of a good plumber, who am I going to call to get a good recommendation that I can trust? Your real estate agent. And so I
Oh,
tell agents, you need to know who all your local businesses are, and you need to know who are the good ones, who are you going to recommend that you can stand behind, and get behind each other. Let them get behind you as well. I don't care what size town you live in, and
your
that
vendor
is where I
list,
see community.
your
I'm
vendor list,
sorry.
your vendor list is gold. It's just as important as
Yes.
your database. And I love that
Yes.
you're bringing this up because we were in a top 20% mastermind this morning, and we were talking about how being the concierge for your clients, and this is not even
Yeah.
just clients, right? This could be leads that are coming in that are cold, that are like, no,
Mm-hmm.
we're thinking about buying, but we're not, and we're not going to do it right now. Okay, well, wonderful. Well, when you do, I want to be the person that you call. And you don't only have to call me to buy a house. Like I have
Right.
connections everywhere in the city to where if you ever need anything, I want to be the one that you call. If your roof
Right.
is leaking, I don't want you to call a roofer. I want you to call me and let me get my
Mm-hmm.
roofer out there because they're going to move faster for me anyway because I'm feeding them business. And
And
so
they're going to get quality.
and I always tell my agents when I'm coaching too, I'm like, look, your vendor list has to work like you do, and your clients have to be just as excited to use them, and you have to vet them and know that they're good. Because if you send a plumber to that house and that plumber's crack is hanging out, like that's your crack. That is your crack. Your crack is hanging out
Mm-hmm.
because you sent that plumber to their house. So make sure that the people that you're working with are are people that are
That you
solid.
like them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Okay, so let's move on to, because I mean I could talk to you all day long. And let me just say this. This is off side topic, but I want you to tell everybody how to connect with you on social media,
Oh
because
yeah.
on Instagram you keep me in stitches. And I was laughing at you. I think it was yesterday. You had your phone and you were trying to do pictures, and you were like, is that a good picture? Is that not good enough? And I was going, oh my gosh, he's acting like me, because I don't like to do video. I don't, and I tell people you have to do it, but I'm my own worst enemy. So when I saw you doing that little reel yesterday, I was just cracking up going, oh my gosh, that
Yeah,
is every person.
because I have huge earlobes. Like, like my earlobes are like huge. Like I don't like you can see, and
Yeah,
it's so funny because
I got it.
my wife is like, you're ridiculous. All my director of operations right now is like rolling her eyes because I say all the time, I'm like, I gotta get these things taken down because like
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
friends will be like, I'm thinking about getting a lift, and I'm like, well, I'm getting these bad boys cut off. So, but to find me on social, which I'm doing a super huge push right now. I love educating and being funny, and then also just being
Yes,
funny. Like I love that,
it
and
was
so
good.
on Instagram, you can find me at it's my tag is Agent Riggs. And then you can find me on Facebook under Haden Riggs, and then on TikTok as well under Haden Riggs. So I'm
Okay.
very
And
on top of it with posting. And I have a social media girl who's absolutely amazing, who is actually she just moved here from Austin. That was when we started R&O group, I was Riggs and she was Ott. And so Brittany and her husband just moved here, and she's selling on the team and
look at
taking care of
there.
our social media. You've got to build
That's
an
great.
amazing team. That's what it's all
That's
about.
great. Yeah, you've got to. Okay, so then, you mentioned a few minutes ago about the mindset. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, um, when you come into real estate, I don't care if you're new, you've been doing it for 30 years, you're at the point where you're now wanting to pull back. In order, I was raised in the mindset that if you want it, you got to figure out how to get it done. And so my mindset was always one of those that I'm the only person that can get me to where I want to be. Now, I can be surrounded by great people, and I surround myself with people that are like-minded because I think it's very important that you are. But I think that at the end of the day, we are our worst enemy, and we can beat ourselves up over the littlest thing. And so when you are working as a coach with a client and you're talking about mindset, what would be one thing that an agent could maybe look at right now and look at themselves and say, oh, you're right, he's talking to me? A mindset positive, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
So the first thing that comes to mind, which is might not be 100% on track with that, but it's something that I say in the room is like, I want you to think about what you're saying in your head, right? Because I mean, I could talk literally for hours on mindset because of the like everything that I've been
Mm,
through for the past 3 years. And that came down. I love therapy. Everyone should have an amazing therapist, and everyone should go and talk to a third party that is disinterested in all of the things that are going on between your two ears. Because my life changed the day that I realized that that voice in my head is not actually me. And
right.
I know for a lot of
Oh,
people
I like that.
that's woo woo, and it's very, which I'm very woo woo. Um, and that voice that's telling you, that's judging people, or that's judging you, or telling you like, oh my God, I'm so fat, or oh, like that is not you. That is
Hmm.
that isn't the true essence of who you are as a soul, right?
Right,
Like that's
right.
not you. And so when you pull away from those and you start observing that voice, it puts you in a place of power and allows you to have more control over those things or like thoughts that are going through your head. And so
Mhm.
the other thing too is like I like to say, like I would do like an exercise and I would say, okay, I want you to think about a time that you really just sucked it up. Like you missed out on a listing, or like you forgot that you're supposed to show somebody houses. Like I want it to be like really you screwed up. And I want you to think about everything that you said to yourself in your head. Like, God, I'm an idiot. I'm so stupid. Like, why would I do this? Why would anybody want to buy from me? Why, yada, yada, yada. Right. And then
Right.
now I want you to think
Mm.
that someone that you truly, truly love, they had the same thing, they did the same thing, and they screwed up. And I want you to imagine yourself yelling all of those hateful things that you told yourself to them.
Yeah.
And I asked them, I say, how did, and most of the time they're like, well, I would never do that. And I'm like, then why the hell are you saying that to yourself? like, like, what are you
Hello.
doing? Like, you're literally not putting yourself in a position of power with your own self. And so I think,
Mhm.
I tell everybody, I'm like, look, like I know I can coach you and I can tell you all about P&Ls and back end stuff, and I can tell you about lead generation and all this stuff. I can't, I can't do any of that. You're not going to do any of that until you truly start being honest with yourself and working on yourself.
Mhm.
I mean, going in
Exactly.
the dark places that you don't want to go, and bringing up all that trauma that you went through at an earlier age or later in life or whatever that looks like. Um, because once you deal with all that and your true authentic self, the money comes. The money is a byproduct
Right.
of how much you work on yourself.
Right. I always say, because we all carry junk. I don't care if you come
Oh
from the
my
very
God.
best family, how much money you have, everybody has junk. It's just a different level of that junk. And, like I have stuff, my kids were like raised like Beaver Cleaver, but they still have issues, you know? And so,
You remind
um,
me of my family so much. Like, like it makes it
well,
very
I mean,
easy to
if
talk to
you
you.
know one of my sons, Stephen, and he's the
Yeah.
goofiest, and so, um, but he's so much, I look at him and I think, you know, oh my gosh, he's so much like me when I was that age, you know, and he wants to just wrap it all up and own the world, you know. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like I tell people, everything you want, you can have it. You just have to figure out how to get it. And it sometimes may take longer than you expect. So you make sure that you write it down. And what does it, when you write down, let's say, you know, I want to go to Alaska in 2 years. Okay, well, you can't just do that. You have to make preparations, you have to schedules and all of that. So what do you have to do to get to that goal? And then that's going to help your mindset realize that, oh, it's not just I want to go, it's how am I going to get there? And then what am I going to do while I'm there? And that's the kind of way I look at things in my life is, you know, if I'm having a bad day and everything, well, the first thing I always say is somebody else is having a worse day than me. And so, you
That's
know, I
true.
go through that. You know, 23 was a perfect year for me to, and anybody that knows me on a personal level knows we went through some personal stuff in 23. You know, we had some bad things happen and we had some most amazing miracles happen. And, you know, it's like, it's kind of like at midnight on January 1st, you know, I walked over to the door and I opened it and I kicked my foot out. And my husband said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm kicking out 2023. There's three things that I'm keeping, and that is my three grandbabies that were born, but the rest of the year can just go away." And I said, "And we're not going to even go there again." And, you know, because pretty serious. And so he just laughed at me. And, you know, and he said, "But who's to say it won't happen again?" And I said, "Well, it could, and we'll deal with it. But right now I'm
Yeah.
kicking it out the door and I'm not thinking about it. I'm not going to let it hold me back. I'm going to
Well,
grow from that experience and be a better person. If I'm a better person, then I'm a better business person, you know,
yes.
so it all comes that way.
The probably one of the biggest things that my therapist taught me is about being present. And so there was a book that completely
Mhm.
changed my life. It's called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It's
I have that book and love it.
It is very woo woo. And if you listen to it on Amazon, it's kind of annoying and does like these zing things. And I like to go ahead and preface that. And I tell you, like, if you're going through life like this with your arm, like your hands clenched and you're pissed at everybody because somebody did you wrong 10 years ago and you
Hmm.
just won't open up, like, it, if you just release, like how much better does that feel? Like if you treat life like so open and you're open to say yes to things and you're just in a more present place, because like what I've learned is that the past is the past. The past, if you're living in the past, that's depression. If you're living in the
Right.
future, that's anxiety, right? Oh God,
Yeah.
this is gonna happen. You're making up these stories of stuff that like you don't know if that's gonna happen. What are you freaking out about?
Mm-mm.
And I'm the word. I used to live in both of those. I would bounce back and forth. Presence is when you realize that there is nothing else available to you than the present moment that you're in ever, ever, ever.
Right. And
That's
I
it.
agree.
And so
Yeah.
when you have time to stop worrying about, and I'm talking about like, oh no, my appraisal came in low, and you just dwell on it all day.
Hmm.
Yeah, like stop. Like be happy that you're, eating lunch with your team, or that
Hmm.
you might be stuck in traffic, but like jam some music. Like you
Right.
it all comes down to mindset and getting over that. And I mean, people go through really dark things and bad things happen to good people. And it's up to
Hmm.
you to figure that out because no one's coming to save you.
Right. And one thing that I notice in a lot of people is that, and especially around holidays, is that they dwell on who's not there. You know,
I
so
love
let's
that.
say you wake up Christmas morning and, you know, everybody's excited and that you could be surrounded by 20 people who love you to death and would do anything for you, but you're sitting there thinking, but so and so's not here, whether they've passed or couldn't make it or whatever.
Yeah.
And I tell people, when you look at things like that, that's the way your life will be.
Yes.
You know, if you look at the people that are in your life and they care about you, then you look at them and you lean on them to be the best of who you can be because they're going to pull that out of you. And, you know, that's because I have a family member that does that. And I always go, quit doing that. It's not
Oh my God,
healthy.
my mom and I, like, I love her to death. And the other day, I'm like, you were being too damn negative. Like, I can't,
There you go.
everything cannot be negative. And I love, I love her to
I
death. And
tell
she would
people, if you're
laugh.
going to come to me with a negative, you better come back with a positive.
Yeah, and like what I think what's really scary and like for a lot of people that I coach, they don't realize how negative they are. Like
Yeah.
no one's ever put a mirror in front of them and been like, tell me more about that. Like
Hmm.
what's so important about you being upset?
Right. Well, and I'm not going to go into great detail, but I had something happen to me that was so out of something I never thought would happen. I knew it could, I just never knew it would. And when I was faced with it, I sat my husband down and we talked about it. And, I was of this mindset that nobody needs to know. We'll tell them after we get it taken care of. Nobody has to know this because everybody's going to want to, cry or, be sad and feel sorry for me. And I'm not that person. I just don't want to talk about it. When it's over, then we tell them and then we say, look, it all turned out great. And my husband looked at me and he said, okay, that's you, but that's not me. And he said, and I need that support around me. And so I'm like, okay, fine. So I told the people that needed to know. And I said, and then we're not talking about it. And I said, you can be there for your dad and talk to your dad, but I don't want to talk about it. And so I said, because I'm a positive person and I'm going to go into this in a positive way. And so when I walked away from that situation, the thing that kept me going was the positive. I pulled out everything I had on positive affirmations, read that Bible again. I did everything I could to keep my mindset where it should be so I could go into the situation positively because I do think that you have control and your mind can control certain situations. And so then when I came out of it, I was like, see, look, there was nothing to be worried about.
Yeah.
And everybody just kind of was like,
I always tell
you
people
know.
too, I'm like, look, if you are dwelling on something so much and you think that it's going to turn out a certain way, you're probably right because you're like willing it
Mhm.
into the universe. Like
Yeah,
you don't know how somebody's going to react to something. Like
right.
you don't have that control over people and you can't let people have that control over you too, right?
Exactly. So with this mindset thing for agents, the one thing that I always want agents to remember is, and and I laugh about it because it goes back to my Mary Kay days. I was a Mary Kay consultant for like 10
I
years when
love
my
it.
kids were
I love
super
it.
little. And let me tell you, I dominated.
Well, that's
I
why you
moved to
said pink
Mineola.
Cadillac earlier.
Oh yeah. I moved to
That makes
Mineola,
sense.
did not know one person. And I pulled out that yellow pages. I had a notepad, I had a script, I had a calendar, and I opened up that yellow book, that phone book and started with the A's. This was in 1990 and started just calling people. If it was like, Paul and Kim Hughes, I called you. But if it just said Hayden, I didn't call you. But I built my business doing that. And then I went into Tyler and did it and built a huge Mary Kay business. But I walked away from that saying it prepared me for where I am today.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that Mary Kay herself, because at the time I lived in Dallas, we all, were in her circle. And she told us, she said, just remember that every person that says no, they're not saying no to you, they're saying no to the opportunity. And when that was said to me, I went, oh, it's not because they don't like me or they don't like my glasses or they don't like my car. It's they just don't want the opportunity. So move on to the next person because eventually the numbers will make up for themselves.
Well, and
And,
everybody
I
gets
always
so
look at that.
hurt about like stop getting so wearing your emotions on your sleeves.
Yeah.
Like, not
Yeah.
everybody is gonna say, and it's kind of like the yes no continuum too. It's like, does a yes mean yes? Well, not all the time. Well, does no mean no? Not all the time. You
Maybe
have to
not.
ask more questions to figure out what's going on, right?
Right. Right.
Go, Blair.
And so that's where, kind of getting to some stories. I always like to hear a couple of
Oh
stories
God.
of
Yeah.
what you can share with agents that they can relate to, or they can go, oh gosh, that could happen to me, kind of a thing. So what do you
Ooh.
got on you that you could share?
Oh my goodness. I think something I I do tell I tell two stories essentially. One's kind of like a I guess like heed the warning of like truly running your real estate business like a real estate business. And I think that it's something that's good to talk about, especially with all the lawsuits and everything that's going on right now around buyer representation and legally like what that looks like. And I remember when I was a new agent, well, I've got a few stories, I guess. So when I was a newer agent, I remember this friend of ours, his stepdad was going to buy him a house and in Austin, and it was a cash deal. And it was, I mean, we were looking up to like 1.1, right? Like they were from New York, like the stepson was coming down. And so I met the stepdad and I showed them probably for like 2 months, probably like 15 houses, I want to say, over like a 2 month period. And then they finally found one that they really, really liked. And so I went to go put an offer on it. Well, and this is old school, right? Like my brokerage required a buyer's rep or our E&O insurance wouldn't cover us. And so I attempted to slip that in, right, as we do, which is not the right practice. You should not do that at all. Um, he like freaked out. I mean, cussing me up one side and down the other. Like I
Oh,
would never sign anything that like legally bonds me to you or your brokerage. And I told myself when I got into real estate, I told myself that I wouldn't allow anybody to talk to me that way because I've been in the restaurant industry forever, and I mean, people talk to you like that all the time. It's pretty crazy. And so essentially that day, I fired him. I said, "You can kick rocks. Like you're not going to talk to me that way." And
right.
so at first, I had a pity party and I was like, this is his fault. And I can't believe that he's so rude and da 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 da. And like once I got right with myself and like calmed down, because we do the mistake of like adding up the commission before like you ever have it, which is such a bad idea, right? Like you should be
Yeah.
working for your clients and not adding up the commissions anyway. And so I remember that day being like, this is my fault. This is my fault because I did not treat my business like a business. I was just flying by the
Mm,
cup of my pants and I was going to show them anything they wanted to see. I should have had a buyer consultation with them. I should have set them down. I should have explained buyer representation in Texas. And this wouldn't have been an issue, right? He would have told me to
right.
kick rocks at the beginning and I wouldn't have wasted two months of my life. And so that was a huge turning point in my business to where I got real and right. I understood my contracts. I didn't work with anybody that didn't sign a buyer's rep, or I wouldn't even send people homes honestly without having a pre-approval, because I valued my time, and that's where my
Hmm.
production really started taking off. That is like the I guess that's like the business like PC one. I guess probably one of the worst stories is we got this client. They were coming into open houses, and they were probably mine and Brittany's age. And they would come to our open houses, and we keep seeing them at these open houses. And they told us that they had an agent. Well, we still got their contact information and put them on like a drip or whatever. And they reached out one day and were like, "Hey, we want to see these houses." Well, they bought like a one, I think it was like 1.1 as well from us cash. And then they're like, "Oh, well, we want you to sell our condo on Zilker." Well, like Zilker's a nice area. It's like a 3-story townhome. And we're like, "Yeah, absolutely." And they're like, "Well, our last agent staged. So would you stage?" And we're like, "Yeah, we staged, of course. Duh." So like we get on Wayfair, we order like all this furniture, have it delivered to the house. We're like staging it. We get there, and my client's in Europe. And so I'm like, "Hey, on the island, like in front of the island where everybody sits, they always kick it and it gets dirty." And I'm like, "Hey, the island is really like dirty. Could y'all, have somebody paint it?" And she's like, "Well, I'm not gonna have anybody paint it, but we do have leftover paint in the garage." And so like me and Brittany are like, "Oh yeah, cool. Like whatever, we'll paint the island, like whatever." So me and Brittany are there like fairly late and we tape off the island, we paint the island. And then I'm like, "Brittany, there's like nail holes on the walls. Like we've got to touch up like this paint or whatever." So we spackle like holes and touch up paint, and we do that on 3 floors of a $650,000 townhome. And
Oh, wow.
we come back the next day, and the walls look cheetah print. Like I'm not even the paint did not match a bit. Like I'm talking about my business partner is like crying. She's like, "Oh, what are we gonna do?" And I was like, "We're never painting again, Brittany. That's like that's what we're doing. We're not gonna paint, okay?" And I'm like, "You've got to get it together." We went to Sherwin-Williams to match that paint probably 4 times in a
Oh,
day.
wow.
And finally, I had the idea to get on top of the kitchen cabinets. I pray to God that my clients don't see this. That we climb on the cabinets and I cut out like a square piece of the drywall, like where you can't see it from like ground level.
Right.
And we take it to Sherwin-Williams and we bring it back. It works well enough. And
Oh,
so
there you
through
go.
that, and my team's like laughing at me right now. So I feathered it out enough to where like it looks good enough to get by, but like if that's probably like one of the worst. Like we're real estate agents, we are not painters. Do not paint people's house. Do not say that you're going to touch up paint because I don't even know how much it would have cost to paint. I mean, that house was like 3,600 square feet. Like it
Oh
was
my
I
gosh.
don't even know how much that would have cost to like paint. So I'm not a painter. I do not paint your house. If your house looks like that, we're gonna adjust the price because price
We're
fixes
going to
can.
bring somebody in to paint the house.
I have great painters now that their cracks don't hang out, and we're gonna do our thing because I do not paint houses.
That's when you have a really good vendors list. And then
Yes.
you look for your painter.
Yeah, we're not painting. And I wish Brittany was in here because she would probably start having a panic attack because I don't think I've ever seen her that like freaked out. I was like, girl, you got to get it together.
Oh, how funny. Girl, get it together. I
Yeah,
love that.
we gotta figure this out.
All right. Well, then the last thing that I want to talk about is just kind of touch on because your wife is an agent. She runs the brokerage and you're
She
running the
runs our
coaching
team.
side.
She runs our
She runs
team.
the team. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
So, and you're the coach. So
Mhm.
kind of tell us how y'all work together and how do y'all make that work? Because we have a lot of people that husband and wives work together, and I bet they would love to hear anything you can share to help them work better together and then how to run life together, you
It's
know.
a lot of wine, like I said earlier. um, you
Mm.
know, my my wife and I have always been very driven. We've always been
Mhm.
very like when I lost my job at the restaurant, like I mean my wife was standing next to me. Like I looked at her and I said, "Baby, I can get my real estate license." And it wasn't if she was worried about finances or like worried because like you gotta understand we were broke as a joke, dude.
Oh
I
yeah.
might have had like $300 in the bank. Like paycheck to paycheck.
Mhm.
And I don't know if she was like deathly afraid, but she never really showed it. And she said, I mean, my mindset was not, I was not the Hayden that I am today. Right.
Right.
Was telling myself limiting beliefs and like, how do I do this? Like, I've never done anything but restaurant. Like, I'm just a server. Like, those are the things that I would say, or like, I'm always going to be a server, or like, I need to go get a management job. Like, and in my mind, I knew if I got a management job, I wouldn't use my real estate license. So,
Mm.
Kayla there being like, you baby, you can do anything. Like I've seen you do anything. You can do anything. And so having us together for that and then seeing that like losing my job was the best thing that ever happened to us. Because
Mhm.
it kicked you past the fear and like that's where magic happens. Like when you're just sitting around
Right.
like just okay with where you're at, but you're really not in your mind. Like you think about it all day. Like it's time to get up and get on with it.
Right.
So I guess with us, I see other, and I guess it wasn't always like this because Kayla would be like, you're on your phone, like you're on your phone. And I'm like, baby, I know I'm on my phone. I remember one time we were watching a movie with Bryson and it was with those damn clients that I painted their house and it was like $1 million deal. And I mean, this was like within the first full year of me like working, right, in real estate.
Right.
I'm already counting the commission. I'm like, this
Mhm.
sucker's like 20K. We're gonna be rich. And so
You were
uh
thinking of it and spending it at all at the same time.
already, which is a whole other story about how I got back in debt and like completely sucked at that. And
Hmm.
so um now it's like we respect each other. Like I respect my
Yeah.
wife. Like I've seen my wife give birth to two amazing children, and I get emotional about it because I wouldn't be who I am today without her. And when life's crazy and it feels like we can't keep going and the phone keeps ringing,
Hmm.
I respect her. If you need to go sit in the car to have a phone call, I'm gonna guard the children from coming in the garage. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, and I'm not gonna sit there and I'm not gonna be mad at you because we're running for the same goal. We're on the
Right.
same team. It's like
Right.
we're at dinner and we're on a date, like we respect each other, but if that client or somebody that she's been trying to get a hold of all day, the phone rings and she has to take it, I don't get upset with her about that because I wouldn't want her to get upset with me about it. Does that make
Right.
sense? And
Oh,
like,
sure.
I'm not by any means saying like you should work all the time and you should do this, but I think in life, there's times where you work really hard and you push, and there's times where you chill. And
Right.
if we're in a push hard time, that's understood. You know what I mean? And the
Hmm.
other piece is like,
Hmm.
I mean, you have to balance each other out. Like I'm a crazy person.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? And I think you're probably the crazy person in your relationship too, right? Like
I
like
am.
I can be hot-headed, I can be crazy, like
Hmm.
I might have one too many glasses of wine. Like I'm that guy in the relationship. And Kayla's level-headed, and I trust her and I respect her, and I know when something comes out of her mouth, it's honesty, and I don't take it the wrong way. I might at first, right? Like
Yeah.
we all do that. I might at first. And I always remember one of my mentors always said, he was going to get married and he was talking to the preacher, and they were sitting down for like counseling and stuff, talking to his mentor. And he said, son, there's going to be times in your marriage that you don't feel loved.
Hmm.
And when there's those times happen, I want you to remember, I want you to lean on what you know, not what you feel.
There you go.
And that once I heard that, I mean, that hit like you gotta be on the same team. Like
Yeah.
there's gonna be times, I mean, like I said, we've got two kids. Like anytime they want to do anything, like one of us has to step out to go do something. And when I did was doing bold, I mean, I was gone 5 days, sometimes 6 days a week traveling. Like I
Right.
could be in three different cities across the nation in a week for
Mm.
7 weeks. And I quickly found out that that wasn't beneficial for my children, or my life right now. And that's why I'm doing individual coaching and one day coaching.
Mhm.
So
Well, we all have been in those shoes if you're driven. I tell people that I'm probably the most driven person you'll meet because everything I've wanted in life, I've had to fight for it. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It just makes me appreciate what I have more. And, the greatest story that I tell people is when you think you cannot get that foot in front of the other. My husband called me in what, 2009, 10, somewhere around there. I think it was 9. And financial crisis, guess what happened? His company shut down. He drove to work that morning and the door was locked with a sign on it.
yep.
He lost his pension, his retirement, he
Um,
lost everything. He's calling me. Now, this is a Friday, and we have 3 sons. One is in college at SFA, and the other two are here at school and they play football. And so he calls me and says, "You will not believe what has happened," and shared with me. And I said, I could tell in his voice there was panic. And I sat there and I said, "You know what?" I said, "I'm going to look at this that God is saying you need to slow it down. You need to be present for your family." Because he was like you. He traveled 5 days a week,
mhm.
in the whole 10 yards, was never able to participate in our kids' activities. So I said, "Here's what you're going to do. You're going to get home in time to go to pep rally, and then we're going to go to the football game." And he was like, "That's all you're thinking of?" And I said, "Honey, it's Friday and it's Friday night football." And, my
And
life was
East Texas,
Friday
baby.
football. My two boys played high school football on the same team and they were really good. And so that's the way we looked at it, was that, yeah, that door closed, but guess what? When that door closed, this door opened.
Yeah.
And it was probably the best thing. Financially, we just really had to suck it up and figure it out. But that's happened to us twice in our marriage, and we've been married 40 years. So we
Cool.
always say, I don't care what happens at the end of the day, have their back. You have each other's
Yeah.
back and you can do anything,
And I've told Kayla, I'm like, baby, we've been broke before. Like,
That's right.
like, like it don't scare me. And I love the
No,
stories of people that were like made a bunch of money and then went broke and then they made a
yeah.
bunch more money, but they did it smarter the next time. Like I'm all about an underdog stories though.
Yeah, no, money is money. You can
Yeah.
lose it and you can make it, but you still have to live with yourself. So at the end of the day, if you lost all your money, who do you have? You have who you are, and you better like who you are, and you
Amen.
better like who you're married to.
That's the other thing.
So
Like I
anyway,
wouldn't be with somebody that's like lame that doesn't want to like like crush it with me. You know what I mean?
yeah, my husband and I balance very well. He runs part of the company, but I'm not a numbers person, and he is. He is like the number one. If you needed somebody like he's not a CPA, but if you needed somebody like a CPA, he's the guy. So, I told him, I said, why don't you just take over this side of the business? And then I don't have to think about it, because I hated it. I mean, it was literally, I would probably take a Xanax and 5 glasses of wine before I had to do that. I used to tell
That's how
people,
you
take
get
needles and
through
just poke me in the eye,
it.
because I don't want to do it. And
Oh,
and I'm still like that. But he's the one that takes it over and then tells me, this is what I need from you.
I love
You know,
that. You gotta
and he
have it.
knows it gets me into a bad mood. And so anyway, but it all balances. All right. So a couple of things that I want to make note of, and we're going to put all of this in the show notes. I'll put how people can reach out to you and
Oh,
everything.
awesome.
But let's close this up with, how can people reach out to you if they're interested in coaching with you?
Yeah.
How would you want that to look?
You're more than welcome. You can email me. My email is Haden, Haden. There's no Y in it. So Haden,
Hmm.
Haden dot Riggs, Riggs at KW.com.
Okay. That's the
You
best
can,
way they can reach
yeah, you can reach me there. You can find me on
you.
Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, DM me. I'm I'm always available. I love meeting
Okay.
agents. I don't really care what part of the nation you're in. Like I said, we do a lot of agent to agent referrals and have a very big network. I just like meeting people and seeing how I can help. I think probably what's different is
Hmm.
I really work on like internal stuff and figuring out like what your relationship is with money and just figure out that like we can talk all day about lead generation, but you know what you
Hmm.
need to do. You
Yeah.
need to talk to people.
Well, this is kind of funny because I picked up something. You may have heard the name Howard Britton, Star Power. He was huge back in the
Oh, yeah,
day.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And he had a huge organization, thousands of people. Wonderful man, had such a good insight on the business. And I came across something the other day, and it was his schedule that was Monday through Saturday, and exactly what to do every minute of that day. And I started looking at that, and I mean, it was repetition. Everything was repetition. And I just laughed, and I thought, I wonder how many people actually still do this, that get up in the morning and do, whatever, 25 calls, knock on 10 doors, go meet 10 people, what are you doing? But that's what it was. And I thought that's how he became so successful,
Oh, yeah.
was, he just repetition, stayed focused and repetition.
Well,
So I think coaching is so good for agents,
it's
in
time
so many ways.
it's time on task. It's time on task over time, right?
Yeah.
Like, and what happens is that most agents, and this is a lot to do with like newer agents, will do the activities and they'll do the activities and they'll stop right before they were about to reap the benefits of what they've been doing. So
Hmm.
you got to get your mind right and go keep doing it until it starts sticking and starts working because that level is different for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think also the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, and you find you a personality that works when you're in that, if you're making those calls, door knocking and everything, you get very comfortable with who you are. And then you think of different ways to do it because you're not so petrified of the answer no. You
Yeah,
know,
and I
so,
think
no can be a pretty powerful word.
the biggest thing too, and like what I tell my coaching clients is like, be a normal human. What are you talking
Yes.
about? Why are you like, well, what if they say that? Well, like, what would you
Who cares?
answer? Like, that's literally like when I get on the phone with anybody, I'm this way. I'm me. I'm like, I told
Mhm.
somebody the other day, they called for a BPO, which is a broker price opinion. And I called them back and I was like, look, I can send you a bunch of bootleg comps that you're not going to know how to read for $300, or I can represent you and I can take care of all this and you don't have to worry about it. And they're like, please send the buyer's rep. And so
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
I mean, you just got to talk to people like a normal human being. Like, this isn't
Hmm.
rocket
You know,
science.
we're, everybody expects everybody to be so perfect and have the right answers when, you know what, I may not, I always tell people, I may not have the answer, but I'll go find it. It may not be my answer, but I will go find the person that knows the answer to that problem.
Yes.
And I think that's when you take your ego out of it,
Oh,
So anyway.
you gotta leave that at the door.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, Hayden, I have really enjoyed talking to you. And, anything that else you can add, just throw it at me and we'll put it in the show notes. Even though you're in Tyler, you did say that you coach nationwide. So I want to make sure people know that. And then I've got your email on how people can reach out. And then, the quote that I always have a little questionnaire for those that don't know this, but there's always a little questionnaire when I have a guest on the podcast. And the quote, I'm going to have you say the quote because I love the quote. I was like, when I read that, I went, I have that right there, right there on my desk.
I
So do
don't
you
even
remember your
know.
quote?
I have so many. Is it about I have two that I use all the time. I say coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous. Is that it?
No, you want
No.
me to tell
Okay.
you?
But I do and then I say you have to remember you're not a human being having a slight spiritual experience. You're a spiritual being having a slight human experience.
Oh, I like that. But no, that wasn't it either.
Neither of those are my
Neither
quote.
one. You said whether you think you can or you think you can't,
You're
you're
right.
right. And I'm like, how simple can it be? You can or you can't. It's all up to you.
It's all
So
mindset.
anyway,
Well, there's two extra
again,
quotes for you.
there you go. I'm
I
going to
didn't
add that to my
give you both, so
affirmations. So, okay. So thank you so much again for joining me. And I'm sure we'll have to do this again. This was a lot of fun.
I'm down. Yeah.
And and I tell anybody that's listening, when you listen to the podcast, if you were looking for something and we didn't deliver it, all you have to do is just let us know and we'll get you that information as soon as we can, whether you reach out to Hayden or me.
Yeah.
I always want agents to know that, oh, you were talking about this, but then y'all went into a different direction, but I'd like to know more.
Yeah.
Let us know, and then we'll help you figure that one out. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Hayden. And I really appreciate it. I hope we get to meet soon since we're like 20 miles from each other.
We're gonna have to
And
go to the taco truck. We're gonna have to go to
yeah,
Ruby's.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, we go to the taco truck in Minneola, or we can go to the restaurant in Tyler.
I love it. I love it.